There's $1 million up for grabs on DraftKings. And to win it, you're going to need to know the right plays. These are your must-have plays for week 2. Starting with the guy who might be the #1 overall play, and that's Daryl Henderson, who saw an elite 82% of the snaps week 1 for the Rams. And he saw the #2 opportunity share in the entire NFL. 86% of these backfields touches. Cam Akers was not really found there, and then Kyren Williams got hurt. And all of this led to a very strong 18 opportunities, including 5 targets. He ran a route on 78% of Stafford's dropbacks. This is very good usage. And oh yeah, by the way, the Rams have a 29-point team total, the highest on the week, and they're 10-point favorites. The perfect conditions for a running back, and he's just 5,700. Start Henderson. And then go get yourself some DJ Moore, because Mr. Moore, like Henderson, is just $5,700 this week. And he'll draw a matchup against the 30th ranked from week 1 New York Giants secondary in terms of coverage. And Moore actually played well week 1, you can see here for yourself. He was top 12 at gaining separation against man coverage, and he ran a route on all 100% of Baker Mayfield's dropbacks. This led to a solid 24% target share, but here's the issue. Carolina ran only 50 plays week 1, the second fewest in the NFL, so it led to just 27 passes. Expect more passes and more targets this week. And then consider playing this wide receiver who continues to be disrespected. And that's Jacoby Myers at just $4,400, who is cheap and likely going to be low owned again. Yeah, his offense is not ideal, but it's baked into his price. Let's see what he did week 1. Week 1, he saw a solid 6 targets, led the team with 27 routes run, but here's the big thing. Myers saw 2 deep targets. That's targets of 20 plus yards, and this is important because he only saw 13 all of last year. If he starts to see this usage, yeah, this price tag is far too cheap. Play Myers and then consider this workhorse RB, and that would be Leonard Fournette, who was far too cheap this week. He played 90% of the snaps until the 4th quarter blowout week 1. This is unquestionably his backfield, and he didn't even get involved in the receiving game because they were blowing out the Cowboys. But now the Bucs are just 2.5-point favorites, so expect a closer game and expect more targets for Fournette this week. And as you can see from my tweet, he's finished as a top 15 RB now, including week 1. In 12 of his last 13 games, he has a safe floor and a high ceiling. Now, believe it or not, I actually like Fournette under his rushing yards, 69.5. I like him to get there in DFS for touchdowns and fantasy in general, and also his receiving department, as I just highlighted. So I take the under 69.5. If you want this, you can get it linked down below with 100% deposit match when you use the code SAL22 on prizepicks.com. But not only that, you'll also receive my weekly projections, player point projections and rankings the entire year, which comes with a $20 Amazon gift card. All those beautiful perks for you people. For your first-time depositor, hit that link in my bio. And then hit up this quarterback. And he might be the best play on the week. We're talking $6,200 Derek Carr, who has an elite 28.5-point team total, the second highest on the week, and his matchup is oh so juicy. He gets to face the number 32 secondary from week 1 that was giving it up left and right to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense, and that is going to be the Arizona Cardinals. And his clear stacking option is Devontae Adams. And speaking of, Adams had a fantastic debut. He was just fine in Las Vegas. He saw an elite 50% target share, which led to 17 targets. And now he's also going to get that great matchup that his quarterback had against a poor Arizona Cardinals secondary, which features 3 cornerbacks that ranked outside the top 70 last year in coverage, including Marco Wilson, who will be his primary matchup this week, who ranked week 1 88th out of 95 cornerbacks in coverage. So expect a big week from Adams, but here's the one issue. Now, according to my projections, I have Adams at 22 projected points, but the problem is he's coming in with ownership, 22%. So you need to stack him up to get different here. If you want to see my entire ownership projections, check out my Patreon, linked it down below in the description. And if you want to find a lower owned player, check out this guy. And we're talking second-year player Kyle Pitts, who he just caught 2 balls week 1, and that's why he's going to be low owned this week, but his usage was elite. See for yourself. Pitts saw a 37% target rate week 1, meaning 37% of the time when he ran a route, he was being targeted. This is like Tyreek Hill level in terms of how often being targeted week 1. And expect him to catch more than 25% of his passes like he did week 1 this upcoming week. Big upside for Pitts. And there's also nice upside for Marquise Brown at just $6,200. He was a great option last week and came in with high ownership, let a lot of people down, so you're going to get him at lower ownership this week. And look, he only saw 6 targets last week, but a lot of these were high value targets, 2 red zone targets and 2 deep targets of 20 plus yards. That means upside. And he'll get to avoid a bad matchup and instead get a good one. Here's what I mean. Raiders cornerback Nate Hobbs is fantastic. Second-year player, 5th round pick. They found a diamond in the rough out there, but he plays in the slot primarily, and that's not where Hollywood Brown plays. Just 8 snaps for Hollywood Brown in the slot last week. Instead, he'll see Rocky Sin on the outside, who in week 1 allowed 4 receptions and 60 yards in coverage. It's a good matchup for Hollywood. Now I'd like to talk about his former quarterback, Lamar Jackson. And now if I was to play one of these 3 quarterbacks above $7,000 this week, it would be $7,400 Lamar Jackson, who did struggle week 1. He was 28th in true completion percentage and just 17 rushing yards. However, Lamar only threw 30 times, but 7 of them were deep targets. And this was something they talked about all offseason, was targeting downfield more often. This leads to a lot more explosive plays. We already know he has his legs for explosive plays. If he's going to use his arm now, Lots of upside here. And there's only one player I would stack him with, and that's his tight end Mark Andrews, who you're going to have to pay for, but Andrews ran a route on all 100% of Lamar Jackson's dropbacks, and this is not something he's used to doing. This number was 84% all of last year. If he keeps up this usage, he's going to be seeing 7 to 8 targets at least each week. So consider Andrews, and I'm shocked it's taken us this long to get to this running back. And that would be $7,300 Saquon Barkley, who saw his best usage since 2019 in week 1. He led the Giants week 1, the entire team, not just the running backs, with 7 targets, 21 routes, and 24 touches. He was a workhorse back, the number 1 option on this team. And now he gets a matchup week 2 against the Carolina Panthers, 31st ranked run defense. Yeah, he's gonna have a good time here. And it was great to see Saquon have his explosiveness back. Let me explain. In week 1, Saquon evaded 15 tackles, so he broke 15 tackles, and he had 3 breakaway runs of 15 plus yards. He is back. Now, your only problem with Saquon is he's likely to be the highest owned guy, as you can see in my projections here, on the entire slate. 25% ownership early on. You can see Henderson, we talked about earlier, a little bit lower owned at 17, 18%. So just keep this in mind when you're building your lineups. Again, if you want to see these entire projections, ownership, and all of that, check the link in my bio to Patreon. So we go from one elite running back to another, and that would be Christian McCaffrey. Now, Saquon should be in this $8,000 plus range, if I'm being honest with you, so you're getting a really good discount here. But McCaffrey week 1 still saw an elite role, so he deserves this price, and even he is probably too cheap. He played 83% of the snaps week 1 and saw 82% of his team's opportunities. Now check this out. McCaffrey saw 14 touches for 57 yards, but he should have had another 32 yards. He ended up picking up a fumble and running it for 32 yards, as you can see in this play here, and was not credited for it in any stat sheet. So that's a mistake. He should have actually had 86 yards and a touchdown, which looks a lot better this week. Now here's why he only saw 14 touches. Similar to his teammate DJ Moore, he was on a team that only ran 50 plays. So if you're running not a lot of plays, seeing 14 touches out of the 50 total plays you ran is actually pretty good. So expect more touches this week for McCaffrey, and then check out this elite wide receiver. And that would be $7,100 Tyreek Hill, who's far too cheap. He was fantastic in his Dolphins debut. He saw 41% target share, the 3rd highest in the NFL, but that's not all. Because even in Miami, Tyreek still saw the deep targets. He led the entire NFL with 3 targets. So now if he's going to get this heavy volume and not have to compete with a guy like Travis Kelce, and he's still going to see downfield usage at a cheaper price point, he's not 8 to 9K like he was in Kansas City, yeah, this is a good spot. And that's exactly why I'm taking Tyreek over 65.5 receiving yards, and you can as well. And a reminder, when you click the link in the description, you'll just have to follow these 2 simple steps to get my weekly projections and rankings, which comes with a $20 Amazon gift card if you are a first-time depositor. All these beautiful perks for you just for one first-time deposit. Now let's talk about this bounce back QB. And I really enjoy this price range of the 6K range. We talked about Derek Carr, and now I want to talk about Matthew Stafford, who's just $6,300. His injury seems to be okay. He's coming off of a rough week 1, but now it's a great bounce back spot. Good matchup versus Atlanta. 29-point team total. Has all of the perfect stacking options when you're talking Cooper Kupp, when you're talking Allen Robinson and Tyler Higbee. I like Stafford this week, and he should be coming in at lower ownership. As you can see right here, Stafford's not breaking 10% ownership. Below 10% ownership for a quarterback is great. Once you start to stack him up in DFS, meaning play him with another one of his teammates so you can get more upside there, correlation, he starts to become like 2 or 3% owned in these contests. And speaking of the Rams, I also have a lot of interest in $5,500 Allen Robinson this week. Like Mike Williams on Thursday night, I'm expecting a bounce back for Robinson this week. Look, he has a solid week 2 matchup. For around 40% of his snaps, he'll see D. Alfred in the slot, who allowed 100% catch rate last year, and then the rest of the Atlanta secondary isn't great. AJ Terrell is there, who was fantastic last year, but in week 1, even he struggled. And look, Robinson saw just 2 targets week 1, but here's the good news. It wasn't for a lack of usage. He was out there for 95% of the snaps and ran a route on 95% of Stafford's dropbacks. He's still getting elite usage. Expect the volume to come. And now let's talk about a really sneaky running back, and that would be $5,400 Rashad Penny, who I only want because I'm expecting really 1 to 2% ownership this week, but there's one big piece of news you have to follow. That would be his teammate Kenneth Walker, who practiced in full on Wednesday, but then was limited on Thursdays dealing with this hernia surgery recovery timeline. So if he doesn't play, it's still Rashad Penny's backfield. I would like him as a low owned play. If Walker does play, I'm going to be out on Penny. And there's a similar contingency with these Buccaneers receivers, because as of Friday morning, Julio Jones and Mike Evans didn't practice yesterday, and Russell Gage was actually the one who got in a limited practice, and we already know Chris Godwin isn't going to play. So this is a lot of injuries. So if they all play, I'm really not interested. But if one of them was to miss, I'd have interest in the other 2, especially Russell Gage at a cheap price point. Now let's talk about a great tight end play. And we're heading back to the Rams, and it's $4,200 Tyler Higbee, who's a fantastic stacking option this week with Matthew Stafford. He ran the 4th most routes of any tight end last week, and he saw an elite 27% target share, which is like Travis Kelce numbers, leading to 11 targets. He is a great option this week. He'll probably come in around 10% ownership. But if you want a lower owned tight end, check out this guy. And we're heading to Cincinnati, where Hayden Hurst is just $3,600. And now a lot of his stats last week, he saw 8 targets, were skewed because the game went to overtime. However, he did run a route on 81% of Joe Burrow's dropbacks. So he was out there a lot. That was the 8th most in the NFL for a tight end. And he saw 2 red zone targets, which is great to see right off the bat week 1. So when you put all these things together and then you look at my ownership projections here on Hayden Hurst, he's coming in at just 4.7 projected ownership. He is a great play in any format, your season-long leagues, DFS, cash games, or GPPs. Now let's talk about his quarterback. I'll be honest with you, I prefer Stafford and Derek Carr more than Joe Burrow at $6,600 because Burrow, his first time seeing a lot of cover 2, 2-man high safeties, he struggled a lot. 4 interceptions, just 6.4 yards per attempt, well below his career average. This is a concern. This hurt Patrick Mahomes last year for like 4 to 6 weeks. So we'll want to track this. He's still a decent play because of the team total and the weapons, especially if T. Higgins plays. But if Burrow starts to pick up ownership, which right now he's picking up a good amount, I'm going to be staying away. I probably won't avoid this next wide receiver. That's because I have no clue how Brandon Cooks is just $6,000. I mean, he's one of the premier receivers in the NFL at this point, 12 targets quietly week 1. And now in 13 career starts with Davis Mills, Brandon Cooks averages 9.9 targets per game, 15.5 fantasy points, which is 24% more than he had with Deshaun Watson. And because of this, I like Brandon Cooks over 60.5 receiving yards this week. Go ahead and take it with the link in the description. And then take this value wide receiver. And that would be at just $4,300 Zay Jones, who's actually cheaper than his teammate Marvin Jones this week, even though he's the clear number 2 option on his team. Because he co-led the Jaguars week 1 with 42 routes, and he also saw 9 targets. And this is the impressive part. 3 of these 9 targets were in the red zone. So if he has that type of usage right away week 1 at this price point, he is a smash play. And if you want the ultimate 1% owned play, consider this rookie. And that would be $3,600 George Pickens, who I get it. He was not great week 1. But here's the thing. You drafted him in season long because of his overall upside this year. And in week 1, he still saw decent usage. And let's get this straight. You're playing him because he's 1, cheap, 2, low owned, and 3, good usage, 32 routes week 1. And I get it, those routes are skewed because the game went to overtime, but he still ran a route on 82% of Mitchell Trubisky's dropbacks. This is a good number. Consider George Pickens a 1% dart throwing like a Millie Maker type lineup, and then play this stud receiver. And that's right, I didn't stutter. I'm talking Christian Kirk at $5,700 because he saw week 1 stud usage. I'm talking 12 targets and a 32% target share. He was also in the slot for 70% of his snaps, and he saw top 20 efficiency numbers. All of this is the combination and recipe for a breakout year, which might also be the case for this Denver receiver. That would be $5,600 Jerry Judy, who was the primary slot receiver week 1 for Russell Wilson over KJ Hamler. And Wilson, Russ, he loves his slot receivers. Remember Doug Baldwin? Remember Tyler Lockett? Now this led to Judy seeing 7 total targets, 4 from the slot, but that's not all. Because out of these 7 targets, 57% of them were high value. 2 were in the red zone and 2 were deep targets of 20 plus yards, including his 67-yard touchdown. So he is a steal at this price, and so is his teammate. We head to the tight ends, and it's $3,700 Albert O, who, if this offense is going to be quick, short passes like we saw week 1 in Denver, it's going to benefit Albert O and his elite size and speed, especially in the red zone. And Albert O wasn't on the field early. He was actually the 4th tight end to step on the field for the Broncos, but he still ran a route on 81% of Wilson's dropbacks, which was top 10 in the NFL. Consider Albert O, and then believe it or not, you're going to want to consider this running back. And that's the older running back in Rex Burkhead, who ended up seeing an elite role week 1. As you can see from my tweet here, he saw 13 rushes and 7 targets, so 20 opportunities, and led the team in the backfield with 27 routes. Not only that, but he played every 2-minute drill snap and all the third downs because the team trusts him. Now, there's no doubt about it that the rookie Damien Pierce can start to take more work any week, maybe even this week. Because let's be honest, week 1 Rex Burkhead was not efficient. Just 2.9 yards per carry and 3.7 yards per touch. This wasn't fantastic. They just trust him in blocking and pass catching on third down. And speaking of trusting a player, Michael Thomas is back, and he's somehow only $5,800 on DraftKings and picking up low ownership, below 10%, even though he was a top 10 receiver week 1 and scored twice. And that trust I was talking about, yeah, he was number 9 in target rate versus man. So whenever it was man coverage, Jameis was saying, oh yeah, I'm going to throw it to Michael Thomas. And Michael Thomas said, yeah, I'm going to score that touchdown. And like I said, I'm surprised he's coming in this low owned. In my ownership projections, I have him right now at just 7.7% ownership, even though he's a really solid play. Go ahead and play Michael Thomas this week. So these are your must-have plays for week 2 if you're trying to win $1 million. Be sure to take advantage of all the offers in the description. If you want my ownership projections, that are down there. If you want that $20 Amazon gift card, that's down there as well. And then if you want to see the top 24 running backs ranked out for this week for DFS for season long, check out this lovely video right here. And then I'll see you Sunday morning before the games on my new live streaming channel.